But welcome back to the Strong Families podcast. Hi. Today we are chatting to our friend Ray, and we're so excited to have you. Hi, Ray.
Hi, guys.
And we're calling this episode Let's Talk the Dad Perspective because we just wanted a dad on. We've noticed we've had a lot of women talking, and I know we have dad listeners. I know that we have dads that listen to this, and so we thought let's get a
Was
dad
it just
on.
your dads?
No.
My dad doesn't know how to listen to podcasts.
Absolutely not.
But yeah, we thought let's get a dad on, talk about dad life.
Awesome.
So we always start by asking our guests, what's your family snapshot? So describe your family, who you are, what you're about, what you like to do, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So my name's Ray, my wife Jess and we have two kids. Sailor, who is 4, about to turn 5 in a couple of months, and then Matthew, who is 8 years old, about to turn 9 next year. And we live in Brisbane here, and we've been here for 3 years. We've travelled around a lot when the kids were a lot younger. I think before Matthew had turned 6, we'd lived in 6 different cities.
Wow.
And so we'd lived in Townsville, Sunshine Coast, South Africa, and then back to Townsville again, and then we were in Cairns and now Brisbane. So we've moved around a lot, but now we're kind of settled down here in Brisbane, and this is where we're at. It's good.
Yeah. Just on that, I mean, I know this isn't really what we were planning to talk about, but like, did you find because the kids were quite little they handled those changes well, or was that actually something really hard to navigate as parents?
Yeah, Sailor probably never really affected her at all, because when she's 4 now, and when we moved to Brisbane she was 2,
Right.
and so she didn't really have relationships or friends before that. It was kind of she just was a blob that made noise and followed us around. Matthew, on the other hand, we had Matthew when we were in South Africa, in Sunshine Coast, and we moved around a fair bit, and he doesn't remember living in Townsville or Sunshine Coast or really South Africa. He remembers Cairns, and so probably the hardest move for us was moving here to Brisbane. This is our 3rd year here now, so we moved in 2022, 21. I can't remember one of those two. And that was probably hardest for him because he was in prep. He had just finished prep and then was going into grade 1, and so he had kind of some friends, and so this move was harder for us. And this I guess that was kind of for us. We're like, oh, well, this is our last kind of big move for a while, because the kids are kind of getting to an age where they feel it a lot more, and
you kind of want them to be settled. And
big time.
Was there anything that helped getting him settled, like that made him feel at home here, or just time?
Yeah, it was a big one. Was time. When we first moved here, obviously we're part of the Church Unlimited here, and we had I had a lot of friends here already, and a lot of our friends had kids around the same age, and so that probably made it a lot easier. So Joe, we've obviously known you and your husband Dan for a while, and our kids are around the same kind of age, and so that made it a bit of an easier transition. Doing life with people with kids around the same age made that transition a lot easier for our kids. And then and now it's funny, I see them as they're the kids who are now involving other kids to try and make them feel more comfortable, and it's been a real blessing. But I think the school was hard for Matt, because there were no friends. He didn't know anybody at school, and so he's had to make new friends. And because the school that he's in now is a bit larger than the one he was a part of, he's in grade 3 this year, and there's 4 grade 3 classes. So kids he's done grade 1 and 2 with, he's not in the same classes anymore, and so he's had to make new friends every year. But they've adjusted well, and they're loving being a part of Brisbane here now. So
yeah, awesome. That's a good snapshot of life now. You've travelled, now you've landed, you've got roots. But what was life like before you had kids? What was Ray like before Ray had kids? Tell us all.
How long have we got? No.
You were a rock star, I heard.
Yeah, you were a rock star.
I've heard that you wore really skinny jeans and
had the hair over the one eye. And
I had hair once upon a time. That was probably the biggest change. Before kids, I had hair.
Okay.
And it wasn't grey. No, before kids, we lived in Townsville. Jess and I we both grew up in Townsville. Been married 13 years now, and our eldest Matt is 8, so you can do those maths. I think we were married 5 years before we had kids.
Good maths.
And that's pretty quick maths, eh? And so before we had kids, I think we're a lot like a lot of parents before they have kids. We just had 2 disposable incomes, no responsibilities,
carefree,
and we were carefree. And
were you pretty spontaneous, Or
I've never been really spontaneous at all. Nah.
Okay.
am impulsive, which sounds the same, but it's not.
Okay.
Like I'm impulsive. Like I think about something, I'm like, yeah, I've just got to
Yeah.
do it now. But I'm not the kind of person who's going to go out of what my normal life is.
Right. Yeah.
Whereas my wife is probably a bit more spontaneous, like
Yeah.
a
Right.
bit more adventurous.
Adventurous.
Yeah.
Okay. There you go.
And so, yeah, that's kind of before we had kids. It was, you know, since before we had kids, I've always worked at the church, and so that was kind of life for me, was serving at church and doing church life, and
Yeah.
and so not much has really changed there.
Yeah.
I think the biggest part that's changed is probably Jess. We made a decision when we had Matt that Jess was going to be a stay-at-home mum, and that was, you know, that's not right or wrong. That's just the decision that we made for our family. And so, you know, it's been 8 years now since we've had 2 disposable
Yeah.
incomes. And so that's
pretty
probably
big
that's been
change.
the biggest change, is
Sure.
having to. But the cool thing you find is that you live within your means, right? Like we look
Yeah.
back at it now and we're like, what did we do with all of our
Literally.
money?
Don't you wish you saved it better?
Like how did we?
I often think
Yeah.
that. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, I could have saved a bit more back
and
then.
so, but
but
that was
you
a
don't know
that
what
was
you
a
don't
decision
know.
that we made, and it. Looking back on it now, we appreciate that decision so much because we did move around a lot.
Yeah, of course.
Having that stability of just being at home with the kids through
Yeah,
it
that's
all,
true.
that's kind of really helped us.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
And where we might not be as financially well off as other people with kids, and they've got houses and stuff like that. It's pretty cool to think our son Matthew can say that he's lived in South Africa for a
Yeah,
year.
that's
Like that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And with having Jess as a stay-at-home mum, that's allowed us to be able to do those kind of things.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
that's pretty cool. I've heard you say before that when Matthew came along, though, it was pretty life changing for you and for Jess. Obviously, I mean, it's life changing for
Yeah.
both
Yeah.
mum and dad. But yeah, I guess talk us through, like, what was that experience like having a kid for the first time? What were some of the things that you were like, man, I'm not ready for this, or I wasn't
Yeah.
expecting it to be this way?
I think, you know, they always say that you're never prepared to have kids, right? You're
No.
never going to be ready.
Yeah.
You're
Never
never going
ready.
to be
Never.
right,
Yeah.
the right time to. And but no one ever tells you, like, no matter how many times people tell you, you can never understand that until you live it.
Of course.
And I think I was thinking about this earlier on this morning, and I by no means mean to kind of in anything that I say today offend mothers, because I think what mums do in a kid's life is
Yeah.
is amazing. But as a dad, I struggled with the pregnancy process, right? Dads don't really have a lot to do with that,
Yeah.
right?
No.
We get Jess's thing was cheeseburgers, and that was my job, was just get
Yeah.
cheeseburgers on
Yeah.
hand whenever,
Yeah.
you know, and that's kind of what the dad kind of plays a lot of that in that
Yeah.
role, and even at birth when you have your kid and there's still I don't mean this to make fun of my kids, but for the first little bit, they're just a blob that just
Yeah.
cries and poops, and you're
Yeah.
like, this is almost like another job or a chore that I do. Change.
Yeah.
And it's not until your baby starts to really interact or look at dad and their face lights up. That's when, for me, that's
Yeah.
when kind of everything changed.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, don't get me wrong. When we had our first kid, I fell in love with Matt straight away.
Yeah.
And your life changes, and you love this kid so much. But it's kind of like almost like, oh well, you don't really
Yeah.
do anything. Like, you
Yeah.
just kind of sit there. It's like a modern day Tamagotchi, right?
Yeah.
You just go, I don't do anything.
I'll hold the baby while mum does
Right.
other things.
Yeah,
but other
of
than
course.
holding the child and
But then when
changing the
I
nappies.
still remember now, like when Matt first started to make noises and would look up at dad and smile, you're like,
Yeah.
oh, this is
There it is.
This is real, right? That's when it. But up until then, it's just a lot of hard work.
Yeah.
And at times struggling with not feeling that connection the same as mum does. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
That makes total sense.
Yeah.
Like. And almost to an extent, you kind of almost feel a bit bad about it. You're like, why don't I feel that connection? The truth is, it's just because we've not had that same process. That
Yeah,
pregnancy
Yeah.
absolutely.
process.
Or like,
And-
why does the baby not seem to want to settle
Right.
with me or whatever? And it's like, well, they've
Right.
been in mum's tummy. Like, they're
whole
so
time.
Yeah.
connected to mum.
Yeah.
Of course, that's going to be familiar
Yeah.
and safe.
Yeah, and then
and-
even with when they're a newborn as well, like there's some things that mum has to do that dads don't do.
Yeah,
right? Like
that's
I don't
right.
have to go into that. You can use
Yeah.
your imagination.
we can figure it out. We've
Absolutely.
been
We
there.
can do that.
right?
Yeah.
And so there's some things that as dads you just can't
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
And then there's other things that like I guess you learn to you put in your work in different areas, if that
Yeah.
makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah.
Right? Like it's not just about mums job is to look after Bub and Dad's job sometimes. If that first little part is actually just to make sure Mum's doing okay.
Yeah.
Like that's I don't mean to downplay the roles, but that's
no,
you know, like I found for me a lot of it I couldn't do a lot with Matt, but I could do a lot for Jess.
Yeah,
you know?
that's awesome.
Yeah. Oh, that's such a great perspective to have with it, though, because I think some dads would feel a bit like I'm kind of left out of this new family bubble a bit, but you're like, oh no, it's just a different role.
It's a different role.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
Like it.
Love.
All right. Looking back, what are some of your favourite moments that you've had as a dad? Like, you know, is it kids' first steps, or is it when they start talking, or what have been those things that you're like, yeah, it's hard, yeah, it's life-changing, but that's really made it feel worth it?
Yeah, like I said before, I think probably the biggest thing was when like I've got a ton of video. I love how Facebook reminds you of memories, right? And I think every year I get these videos pop up of when Matt was 1 and really young. I used to skate a lot, and I used to skate with Matt. I'd have Matt in the carrier on the front. I know that's probably like Tracy Grimshaw's going to come after me for this, or I'd skate with him on my shoulders and stuff in a safe environment. But for me, those moments, because it was something that, like I said, like for me as a dad, I felt like I was connecting with my kids, and that was
it's almost like a special thing that you could do.
Right.
Yeah.
And I love my wife, but she can't skate, and she doesn't have that. That's just something that I have.
It's your
right?
thing. Yeah.
But I think those moments where, like I said, as a dad, where there's those connection moments with your kids that you don't get up until those moments, they were kind of the big special things that ring true in my like that when I think about moments, that's what really comes to mind. And when, like for Maddie, my son, he when he reached an age where he realized that, or he kind of like dad's playing games with dad is that's the goal. That's life's goal. So, and so
that's my life goal.
And when they're young boys, that's it, right? They just want to play with dad.
Totally.
And even now, Matt's still like that. Like, I remember I was telling you girls earlier about a hairdresser game that we played, right? With my little girl. And what I didn't tell you was that when we're playing this hairdressing game, Matt would come in halfway through and be like, "Hey, Dad, I want to be the bad guy who steals everything from the hairdresser and you just shoot me." And I'm like, "Bro, this is not the time or place."
It's not really the type of game that we're playing.
But I still remember when he was young, when he would have been 3 or 4, setting up the backyard with obstacles and having water bomb fights, or having Nerf fights and stuff like that. Stuff that for me, Matt will forget when he's older, but for me, that sticks in my head because I'm like, this is the moment where my boy just wanted dad, wanted to be with dad and do things with dad. Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. That's really special. Now, you have a boy and a girl, like me. I'm now stepping into this one of each, which is awesome. Mine's still barely out of the block stage yet, though.
Don't mean to brag, but I've got 2 of each.
Yeah, okay.
That's your own fault, Joe. That's
on
fault.
you, my dear.
We just needed extra practice, okay?
Yeah, right.
So, discipline can be a bit of a naughty word. It can have a negative connotation, but I think it's really important. So, what works and what doesn't, in your opinion? And have you found that there's differences with a boy and a girl? Do you have to approach things differently?
Yeah. My son led me into a false sense of security.
Okay.
My little boy Maddie was such a dream child. I mean, he had the same problems or same things that most kids have, sleeping, all that kind of stuff, and only eating chicken nuggets, all that stuff, right? Like, but for the most part of it, he was such a sweet. And if you guys know my boy, he's so sweet and gentle and kind. Yes. And I think, we never had to discipline Matt. It was just as soon as you said, Matt, you change your tone of your voice, and he's like, oh, I'm so sorry. And so when we talk about discipline for Maddie, it was always just like as soon as he knew that he had upset you or he had disappointed you, it was just like that was the end of the world for him. Whereas Sailor, my little girl, she had for about a couple of years, she had a bit of a nickname in her household as being called Sailor Bin Laden.
Nice, very good.
Because she was a bit of a terrorist.
Awesome.
And I still remember, I try to explain to people the difference between our 2 kids was Maddie, if he was doing something that was wrong, you'd tell him about it, he would just stop and he would just break down and it'd be the end of the world. I still remember Christmas when Sailor was about 2.5, 3. Yep. And we had a Christmas tree up with our Christmas baubles on there, and Sailor went to go pull one off, and I said, Sailor, don't do that. Yeah. And she looked me dead in the eyes and laughed and just went, ha ha ha, and then ripped it off and threw it on the ground. And I just looked at Jess and I'm like, I don't know how to parent this. Yeah. And so when it comes to discipline, I think I went into having 2 kids thinking, it's all good. What worked
do
for
the same
Matt?
thing.
We'll just
Yeah,
do the
we'll
exact
just
same
copy
thing.
paste.
We've not parented them any different, but they've just turned out so different. So now
Yeah.
we're learning, okay, well, what worked for Matt doesn't actually work for Sailor. So for Matt, even now as an 8-year-old boy, when he does something wrong, he knows.
Yeah.
And he will just self-regulate himself and you say, hey, Matt, you
can kind of like talk through
Yeah.
it.
You can talk through
it doesn't
it.
have to be like a punish or like a
But-
consequence.
Correct.
We don't say
But for
punishment, do we?
Sailor, you could talk to her till you're blue in the face and she
Yeah.
just doesn't want a bar of it. And so what Sailor understands is consequences,
Yeah.
right? Like,
You have to put those like firmer boundaries
So
in.
something silly, something ridiculous and silly, like she's at that age now, Joe. You know what I'm talking about, where she kind of talks back a little bit and she'll question or so. No, I'm not doing that. And so a little thing for us, we're like, well, babe, if you're going to keep talking rudely, there's going to be consequences, and she can understand that, and she can. So we've had to adjust the way that we parent, and that's the trickiest thing, right? Because you're like, and you got 4 of them, they're all different. Your kids are all different.
And then the ages as well, like
Right.
what you think is working for one particular child.
Yeah.
You know, you might be really doing a great job when they're 4 and thinking, okay, this is how we deal with this, and then 2 years pass and you're like,
Different
it
kid.
doesn't work anymore.
Right.
Like I've got to kind of adjust, and they're older, so they understand more, but they also have more.
And then your other
attitude,
kid gets to a
maybe.
different age as well, and then you need to adjust
It's
it
just
all
like
again.
never ending,
Yep.
isn't it?
Yeah, correct. And so I think it's that's been the trickier thing is adjusting as they get older as well, and but I think as well, like for Jess and I, we being on the same page has helped. For us to be on the same page, and so yes, we parent our kids differently according to their personality or their temperament or whatever. And whether you think that's right or wrong, that's what we've done.
Yeah, but your
making
values
sure
are the
that-
same. You're like
Correct.
they're different. We parent slightly differently, but the values. It's
Yeah.
not like you have like different
Yeah,
expectations
that's right.
or something.
Yeah.
That's right. And
Yeah.
so making sure that mum and dad are both on the same page with
Right.
that, though.
Yeah.
How do you do that? Are you like regular check-in, or you like with each other? Are
Yeah, it's
you
usually when
family
usually when
meeting?
I've said something wrong, just corrects me and tells me you can't talk to them. No, I'm joking. I just think I think it's also another important thing as well is, and it used to hurt me at first because I was on the opposite end of it.
Yeah.
So where when our kids were in trouble or our kids were hurt, they would go to mum, right? But when they wanted fun time, it was dad. Whereas, and that used to hurt a bit because I'm like, well, why don't they want me when they're hurting? Why don't they want dad when they're upset? But now I'm actually learning, like my little girl Sailor, it's all about dad. Dad.
Yeah.
And so she will, when she's hurt, she wants dad. And so it's understanding that, like, as much as our kids are different from each other, the way that they see mum and dad will change also.
Yeah.
The way that they process who you are and what kind of parent you are changes it as well. And so,
Yeah.
of course, when they're younger, they want mum because that's all they know.
Yeah.
Mum's with them a lot of the time, and,
Yeah.
and dad comes home from work like a whirlwind, has fun, and then puts them to bed, and we're good.
Yeah.
Whereas as they get older, they understand, well,
Yeah.
dad's not around, not because he's not the carer, but because he's doing other stuff.
Yeah.
And then they start to process it too,
Yeah.
and process it differently.
And that's also probably from just the hard yards you've put in being a present
Yeah.
parent. Like
Yeah.
that you're like, I've been present, I've been there, I've been consistent, and so now like they know they can
Yeah.
come to me. Like
That's right. That's right.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So what do you reckon, like you've kind of talked a little bit about like mums maybe more so nurture and dads more so like have the
Yeah.
fun with the kids.
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe not
Yeah.
every family dynamic is exactly like that, but like I think that's pretty
I like
true
it.
that it can often
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
be like that.
Yeah.
What do you reckon like dads, I don't know, what's their role in the kid's life? Like what do you bring to them in terms
Yeah.
of like your daughter and your son in helping them kind of grow into who they're meant to
Yeah.
be?
Yeah.
What do you reckon dads do?
I think, and without trying to be too stereotypical or anything like that, for me and how I parent my kids is, for my son Matt, I want him to grow up knowing that, part of his role is to look after his family,
Yeah.
and I want him to grow up respecting women, respecting his mum and his sister and other women, and not saying that men have to be the head of the household, but I want him to know that as he grows older, he's going to have more responsibilities put upon him. So will Sailor. But for him, I want him to always know that no matter what, he needs to protect people in his life.
Yeah.
And so I used to make this joke when Matt first started school, or when Sailor first started kindy, and I got in trouble for saying this, but I used to tell Matt, like, 2 things. You always tell Sailor she looks beautiful, even if she looks like a dump truck.
Yeah.
And if
Hey,
anybody,
he probably thought dump trucks were the best thing ever.
Right.
So.
That works, yeah.
and if anybody ever hurts your sister, that's when you step in.
Yeah.
Like I always tell, and Jess is like, you can't tell him to. And so like someone like, you know, he'll be at a playground. Or someone said something about Sailor. I'm like, did you punch him?
Yeah.
And he's like, no, you don't do that, Dad. I'm like, okay. So I'm trying to.
It's so hard, hey? You're like, oh yeah, we do want to treat
Yeah.
everyone kindly, but also like
Yeah.
protect your sister.
Yeah. And so I'm trying to teach Matt that kind of like
The mentality.
mentality of,
Yeah.
mate, you need to look after those in your life, whether it's
Yeah.
women, men, whatever. You need to look after the people in your life.
Yeah.
And growing up to be a strong male who can stand on his own 2 feet. And,
Yeah.
and then for
Yeah.
Sailor, it's a bit different because I think for Sailor, I'm not teaching her to be a. Yeah, what I'm teaching Sailor is that she's worth something.
Yeah.
So I want Sailor to know by the way that I treat her and by the way that I teach Matt to treat her and their mother, that she's worth more than anyone can ever give her, right?
Yeah,
Like that's
awesome.
like for me, that's if I don't teach because stereotypically, you know, you teach your son how to be a rough and tumble, play footy, and you teach the girls how to do da. I just want Sailor to know that she's worth something.
Yeah.
Whatever you do with your life, that's cool. Just know that you're worth more than anybody could ever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that starts at home with me, and that also how I raise Matt to treat her, and
Yeah.
vice versa. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
That's really awesome.
Love that.
I really enjoy that. With balance, so just to kind of throw a curveball in here
Yeah.
now, we know how much you work. You're a very hardworking guy. We see you around the place all the time. So
it's all show, Amy.
is it okay?
just
Cool.
lattes.
He's just hanging
Good to
around.
know, just having
I've heard he's
chats.
had 5 coffees today.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that true?
That's
5?
True. That's true.
You woke up
Okay.
with
And there was a
time,
sneaky
so-
V in there somewhere too.
Yeah, awesome. So with the way you work, are you intentional about how you spend time with the family? Is there like
Very much.
a way you go about that?
Very much so.
How do you do that?
Take you back to when we first had Matt. I didn't do that season well.
Okay.
Because of my nature and who I am, I just love to give. And so
Sure.
at the time, my work was give, where I was working 13, 14, 15 hours a day when
Yeah.
Matt was a baby.
Yeah.
And then I'd come home and give them my second best.
Yeah, right.
And part of working hard is I want to show my kids.
Yeah,
I want to
of
teach
course.
them
You
to
wanna-
work
it's
hard
good
as well.
intentions.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
value of hard work.
But I also want to teach them that when I'm home, I'm all theirs.
Yeah.
Right. We had this talk with somebody yesterday about how school holidays, their kids are on school holidays at the moment, and it's been so much harder, right? And you think it's easier because the kids are home all day, and so when you come home, no, it's harder because when Dad's at work, usually they're at school.
Yeah.
And so when you come home, it's kind of they haven't missed you, they haven't thought about you because they've been at school.
Yeah.
Whereas now you've been out all day and they're thinking about, oh, I can't wait till Dad gets home. Can't wait till Dad gets home. Can't wait. And so yesterday I had a day at work like I normally do, and I was up early, went out early because I was working in the cafe, and got home and my kids just wanted to play.
Yeah.
And so I was playing a game with my daughter, Sailor. We were playing
Hairdressing.
hairdressing.
Yeah.
And part of the game is at one point we go home, we have dinner, she makes me dinner, and we go to sleep and wake
Yeah.
up next morning and
Yeah.
go back to work. And so I fell asleep
Yeah.
on the bed and
You're
nap time. And then I woke up
method acting.
I woke up an hour later and the kids were all downstairs watching TV, and I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, no
I
I would
fell
say
asleep.
have no guilt about that because you were just
Yeah, I was just playing the
really
game. Yeah.
doing the role
100.
that you were expected to do in the game.
Yeah. But I find that one thing that I've been very intentional and I'm trying very hard at doing is when I get home, I'm present.
Yeah.
And so I find it so easy, and I'm sure not just dads, but everyone finds it easy.
Yeah.
You get home from work, and the first thing you want to do is just sit on the couch and
Yeah.
just scroll on your phone or watch TV or something like that. I've actually started getting home from work, going upstairs. We live in a townhouse, and so I'll go upstairs and put my phone on charge upstairs, and then
Great.
come down and be with the kids. And as hard as that can be, I'm like, if someone really needs me, they'll call Jess.
Yeah,
Right? They'll call.
totally.
Do
they'll
you
call
go to the
Jess.
toilet first with your phone for
No, honestly.
For
this
a-
is, yeah.
like half an hour
No,
Just go,
before you plug it in?
no.
what a guy.
I sit in the car park half an hour before. No,
Oh,
I'm
there it
joking. No, I'm joking.
I'm just saying, I honestly, this is actually no shade to my husband who doesn't do that, but
Yeah.
I know that it is a
It is a
very
thing.
common
100%.
complaint
Yeah.
that
and it's tricky, right?
yeah.
Like this, I know we're getting into a different subject, a different,
Yeah.
I guess, topic kind of
Yeah.
here. But I found I was talking with a guy, with a friend of mine who has recently become a dad, very recently in the last month or so about how as a dad, and again, I'm not trying to upset anybody, as a dad, I naturally have this feeling of I need to be on all the time. I need to put up this show of I've got everything all together. And so there's been times where I have, like, you come home, or I'll sit in the car park for half an hour on my phone because I'm like, I just need a moment to myself before I go and give of everything.
I think every parent has done that. I've done that.
Definitely done that.
Yeah.
And so I had felt up until this point that as a dad, I need to have everything together all the time. And so I go to work all day and I give my all at work for everybody else. And my line of work as a pastor at a church is I'm giving out to a lot of people and helping a lot of people. And then I come home and then I need to give out to my kids, and then my kids go to bed, and then I need to give that time to my wife. And then I'm like, when do I get time?
Always time.
And so I have had moments where I've sat in the car or sat,
of course,
gone to the bathroom for 20 minutes, half an hour, just scrolled on my phone or whatever.
Yeah.
But I'm trying very hard now to go and plug my phone in upstairs and leave it.
Yeah, I'm sure you can still have time for Ray, but you just know that window of time is a really important one to be with your kids, whereas you could have maybe that downtime.
And I've just tried to change without like trying to get too philosophical, I don't know what the word is, whatever. Yeah.
Philosophical.
That's the word.
There it is.
Without trying to get like that, I've actually just tried to train my brain or just tried to, in my heart, reconcile that, well, do you know what? Actually having downtime, like, I need that with my kids. Yeah. Like that moment for my kids is not just for my kids, it's actually for me as well. And being a 36-year-old man playing hairdressers with a 4-year-old girl doesn't sound like it's for me, but it actually is. Like those moments with my kids, I'm going to look back at it in 10 years' time and be like, oh, man, I want those moments back. Or she's going to look back on those moments 10 years ago and laugh and be like, man, how good was dad, right? Like, and so I'm just trying to train my brain to think not, oh, this is another job for me. Actually, no, this is actually my downtime. Yeah. And I'm not trying to sound like I'm a better parent than anyone else because it's a struggle. Like it really is. But
especially imaginative play. I find that's particularly draining. Yes. Like I can build a tower out of magnet blocks.
Magnet blocks.
Yeah. That's fine. But imaginative play, like 1 minute feels like 20 minutes.
Yeah, I had a fork. A fork was the scissors for the hairdresser.
Oh, so good. Okay, great.
So I did get stabbed in the head a few times. It was great.
Probably better than real scissors, I suppose.
Right. And it's hard and it's tricky to do that. But I am trying to just train my mind to think, okay, well, you know, it's a small price to pay for what it actually does.
What's
for my
really important.
For my heart, you know?
Yeah, totally.
That's so cool.
I love it.
All right. What's a funny, we haven't prepped you with this one, but like, is there a funny moment where you were like, that was just hilarious as a dad, like a call that your kids have made or just like, I don't know. Yeah,
we've heard a lot of it. My kids are funny. My kids are really funny.
Hilarious. They're awesome.
And one thing that my daughter does at the moment, it's so ridiculous. I don't even remember where it came from, but I used to, I used to say a lot of silly things. I still say a lot of silly things. But I remember saying it like once or twice. I used to say to my kids, oh, I love you, governor. Like just because it rhymed and I thought it was hilarious.
Love you, governor.
Love you, governor.
Yeah, it rolls.
But now my daughter Sailor says it all the time.
People think she's like this
love you, governor. And she's like, love you, governor. She says it all the time. And then we actually had to sit her down the other night. We said, now, babe, it's funny, but when daddy's being sick, like I'll be putting her to bed at night time. Like, love you, baby girl. And we'll pray for her. And I'll see you in the morning. She goes, love you, governor. It's like, we just need to just curve it a bit.
Time and place.
Or don't you hate it when they like pull in something like that when you've just been like having like a training moment with them, be like, hey, you need to, like when I ask you to get dressed, you need to get dressed or something.
Okay,
and they
governor.
They do this like cheeky grin. Okay, governor. And you're like, again, it's cute, but not the time and place.
So we've had a lot of those. It's usually stuff that my kids say. Like the other day we were out camping and the kids had been playing in the river and Sailor just came out at one point. She goes, oh, Dad, I'm knackered. And I'm like, where did that even come from? I've never even said that word. You were there for that? Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, Dad, I'm knackered. I'm like, did she just say knackered?
Sure, mate. You looked around, you're like, did I hear that right?
It's so funny,
what 4-year-old goes, I'm knackered?
Yeah.
It is exhausting being 4.
Yeah.
You know, so hard having someone waiting on you hand and foot with your food and clothing and everything.
What you're wearing or eating.
Yeah. Awesome. Alrighty. Any advice for dads out there? I mean, you've given a lot of great quality stuff, but like anything specific to a dad listening who's like, I'm a bit tired being a dad. Like
Yeah.
I'm, or I don't know what I'm doing, or
I think, and this is so like, I don't know everybody's personal situation or circumstance, but I remember someone said something to me when we had Matt, our first kid, where someone just said to me, "You're enough," right?
Yeah.
And that sounds like such a like such an Instagram reel thing, right? Like, hey, for that mum who's struggling at home with 4 kids, you're enough. But I remember someone saying that to me. It makes me emotional because as a dad, like I said before, as a dad, we're supposed to have it all together, right? We're supposed to, and sometimes it's that feeling of never having enough.
Sure.
And so my bit of advice to dad, you're doing better than you think you're doing.
Yeah, that's awesome.
You're doing better than you, and if you're tired and you get a bit short with your kids, you're doing good. You're doing okay. You're still here. You're still around.
Yeah.
Things are still going okay.
Yeah.
That's good.
And and like I said, it sounds like such like a Instagram thing, but you're enough. Like who you are, the dad that you are, is actually, you're enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We can always be better, right? We can always.
Yeah.
I'm by far not the best parent in the world or husband. I can always do better, but in somewhere inside, I just need to know that actually I'm doing okay.
Yeah.
You're
Keep
doing
showing
all right.
up.
Just
Yeah.
keep showing up. That's the best.
Yeah.
So I said to a mate the other day, I'm like, mate, just keep showing up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just don't go anywhere.
Yeah.
That's if all you do is show up, mate,
That's good.
just keep showing up.
It's awesome.
That's really awesome.
I love that. Well, thank you so much. Thanks
all
for
right.
coming, and thanks for giving us a little bit of a peek into your life
The
and your
dad side of
thoughts,
things.
and just the dad side of things. I think it's really interesting hearing that perspective. Like, I didn't maybe realize how much weight and how much pressure is on a
course.
dad's shoulders, like, because often it does feel like it's like mum's job to hold the
Yeah.
family together.
Yeah.
Mums carry a lot of the, we say mental load, or maybe a lot of the burden of parenting.
Yeah.
But I think sometimes we forget how much dads
It's a
carry.
shared load.
Yeah,
It's a shared load.
yeah,
And I think
Absolutely.
it looks different, like
Yeah.
right, like
Yeah.
it's no, I don't think dads do more or mums do more. I think it just looks different
Yeah.
and how.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I guess society has taught us that, like, has tried to tell us, like, oh, mums should be this, dads should be this. It's not about what you should be. It's about what do you contribute, how are we
Yeah.
doing this? And I think
Like, we're a
if I can
team.
say one more thing,
Yeah.
I would say as important as how you treat your kids is how you treat your partner.
Yeah.
Right? Like, that's one
awesome.
thing that I think that we don't talk about enough, is that my kids watch how I treat my wife.
Yeah.
My kids watch how I talk to my wife. My kids watch how much I kiss and cuddle my wife, right? Like,
Yeah.
they watch that stuff.
Yeah.
And so how you treat your partner is just as important as how you treat
Yeah,
your
that's
kids,
awesome.
I think.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Because they're going to grow up learning that's how they need to treat
Yeah.
their
Yeah.
partner. And
So
you want to make
true.
sure that that's a solid,
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
awesome.
We can be so like kid-centric, maybe the household, and it's
Yeah.
like
And that's not
they're
mum or dad.
watching.
That's
They're
not mum
watching
or
your
dad's
relationship.
specific, that's just your partner.
Yeah,
like,
your partner.
Yeah, yeah,
Absolutely.
that's
they're
that's
watching
right.
so much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
That's awesome.
Love it.
Way to end it.
Yeah.
Love it.
That's
Thank
great.
you for taking the time.
No
Ray.
worries.
This has
Thank
been
you
great.
guys for having me.
Great.
Awesome.
Awesome.